Hey, it's no secret that I am Bucks County proud, so always thrilled to talk about Parks Casino, the number one casino in all of Pennsylvania, which happens to be in my native Bucks County. Big weekend at Parks Casino. Lots of people at the open-air Liberty Bell Beer Garden, the Parks Grill Steakhouse, Bamboo Noodle House, just a few of the outstanding restaurants. They've got action, excitement, and live entertainment. A wonderful place for you to spend time this summer. It really is a destination. It's Parks Casino. Time now for headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. The Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race continues to be, I think, and not just because I'm the most exciting, the most interesting in the country. And control of the entire U.S. Senate may be determined by who wins in Pennsylvania. Dave McCormick conceded, so now we can say is Dr. Oz and John Fetterman. And as neither of these individuals has substance and issues. Instead, it's a battle of the brands. And in the battle of the brands, you've got the Democratic everyman in Fetterman. I mean, Fetterman, the guy who showed up to greet Joe Biden when Biden came to see a bridge that had collapsed near Pittsburgh. Fetterman was wearing cargo shorts. You know, that's his brand. That's who he is. And then it's the TV star in Dr. Oz. Or now we could say it is the heart patient against the heart surgeon. And both the New York Times and Washington Post over the weekend are now on the issue of Fetterman's true condition relative to his heart. We wish him well. Godspeed. Hope he makes a full recovery from his stroke and his underlying heart illness, because that's really what has come to light. But the Washington Post, by way of illustration, Michael Scher and Hannah Knowles inside John Fetterman's changing health scare story. The takeaway is that for 17 days, Fetterman and his campaign were not fully forthcoming about his condition and about what had gone on here and about why specifically he needed a defibrillator. When they finally released a statement, they said this was with 5 hours left to vote last month. Fetterman's Pennsylvania Senate campaign released a confusing primary day statement. He would undergo surgery before polls closed to install a pacemaker with a defibrillator following his recent stroke. As the experts point out, you'd never use a defibrillator to treat atrial fibrillation. It would take 17 days for Fetterman's campaign to explain the inconsistency. A letter from his cardiologist released just on Friday said that the defibrillator had been installed to treat a previously undisclosed cardiomyopathy, which was first diagnosed in 2017, that decreased the amount of blood that his heart could pump. His physician then released a statement. A statement was then released by Fetterman, essentially saying, I'm not going to read it to you, but the gist of it was to say, hey, you know, I should have taken my doctor's advice, and I'm like a lot of the rest of you, so follow doctor's advice. Trying to further that image of, you know, he's the guy you want to have a beer with. A lot of us don't follow our doctor's instruction. On the other hand, you could say that that's irresponsible toward his own health, his family, and those that he wishes to serve. Here's my view on it. My view on it is this too will be forgotten so long as he looks vibrant on the campaign trail, which he has not yet returned to. But if Fetterman returns to the campaign trail and looks like his old 6'8" self, imposing, taking out the oxygen in the room kind of a guy, then this won't be an issue. But I think there'll be a lot of scrutiny, and understandably so, on his physical appearance and condition. Look, this is all about him today. I can already hear people like, well, but what about Oz? What about Dr. Oz? You know, he's a fraud. He's a TV, whatever. Okay, his time will come as well. I would simply note that Oz won the primary where his negatives were like 50%. Among Republicans, 50% of Republicans viewed him unfavorably. And Fetterman, although he won in a landslide, He won every one of Pennsylvania's 67 counties. But interestingly, having presided over the state Senate for 2 full terms as the lieutenant governor, he won the race without the support of any state senator who's a Democrat or state House member who's a Democrat. So, they don't have, neither of them has the traditional support you'd see among the party ranks, which takes me back to where I began. It doesn't really matter because it's a battle of the brands. And gone are the days where the party faithful and the party regular are the ones who call the shots. It's really a media-driven game that rewards the extremists. So that's the Pennsylvania. TC, you wanted to say something about that?
I just think it's interesting because it's not just of interest here in the Commonwealth. You started today on New Day for another national audience, radio and that dissecting what's going on in Pennsylvania, how important it is. It's fascinating to me. And I think I love the battle of the brands because it's beyond normal politicians. These two are beyond normal politicians.
Well, that's what I said on CNN.
Outside the realm.
This morning on CNN's New Day, that was how I categorized.
Exactly. That was a good hit, by the way. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Good way to start the week.
Thank you.
Hey, can I segue into the CNN piece that you posted on Smerconish.com? Because I thought that was really interesting.
As long as it comes from Smerconish.com, you certainly may.
New York Times piece headlined, CNN enters the post-Jeff Zucker era.
Yeah, it's in the print edition today.
Bye-bye breaking news. We talked about the breaking news banner at the end of last week.
Yes.
This New York Times piece goes even deeper into it. I noticed this weekend, what were they saying? New now or new, like there was a different verbiage going with things that were new.
That. Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Not breaking now, but new now, or I'll think of it. It was something like that. I also thought it was interesting in this piece, the New York Times, talking about Chris Licht, the new guy. One early focus has been morning programming, an arena that Mr. Licht knows well from overseeing Morning Joe and his successful retooling of CBS This Morning. Mr. Licht told advisors that he wanted to disrupt morning TV. Internally, he says he wants a more inviting, conversational approach and believes CNN's main offering, New Day, which Mr. Zucker created, lacks a clear identity, 3 people said. In the coming weeks, he wants to create a roster of friends of the show who would make regular appearances on the program, the people said. What is your opinion on this? What's going on? You were just on New Day.
Well, I know nothing. All I know is, like everyone else, what I read in the paper. I don't want people to presume that because I host a program on CNN that I'm in the loop. I'm not. But it makes sense the way it was reported because Chris Licht used to be the executive producer of Morning Joe. And that has been the secret to their success, to assemble an ensemble cast. And so I could absolutely see him doing likewise on CNN. I mean, I think that tinkering with the morning show and figuring out what to do in prime time while also reorienting the ship more toward the center, I think those are the threefold objectives that he has based on what I read and just my gut feel. And it makes sense.
A lot of big moves to make at once, though. I mean, that's
no doubt.
Wow.
Yeah, no doubt. And he's also quoted in that story as saying that he's going to take his time and be deliberative in the way in which he approaches it.
Yeah, he said he might not make decisions that fast enough.
Right. I mean, Jeff was a guy, I can tell you, and I'm not telling a tale out of school. Jeff Zucker was like a one-man decision-making machine. Yeah, and there was no BS. And you brought him an issue, he alone. There was no committee. There was no, there was no need.
They talk in that article about an audience of one. An audience of one. What does Jeff want to see? And that's what you saw.
Right. And the thing about Jeff, with whom I had a really good and very direct relationship, is that you knew where you stood. There was no BS, and you brought it to him, and he would handle it, and that was it. You might not like the outcome, but you get a decision. That's, I think, what I'm trying to say. TC, Saturday night in Philadelphia. I mean, actually, I'll look at the Times lead coverage. A brawl between at least 2 men turned a packed Philadelphia street into a scene of terror Saturday night after they pulled out guns and began firing wildly at each other. By the time the gunfire ended, 3 people were dead and 12 more were hurt. I have the Philadelphia Inquirer coverage posted at Smerconish.com today. It's still not entirely clear what transpired on South Street, which is an entertainment district of shops and restaurants and nightclubs. It's been a while since it was a haunt of mine. Back in the day, it certainly was. But this is not a case like Uvalde, and I'm not minimizing it. I'm not minimizing it. 3 people are dead. But it's not a case where you had a gunman seeking to kill as many people as possible. Instead, it seems like it was a fight, a street fight, and then a number of people, still, I'm not clear how many, pulled out guns and started firing immediately.
Yeah, they've found 2 plus maybe more guns. It seems like more than one shooter. A lot of questions still unanswered. But I agree with you. Unfortunately, the term mass shooting has become something that we know what that is. That's awful. That's someone going into a school or a church or a mall or a movie theater or whatever it is. This doesn't feel like that, and yet it's being characterized as mass shooting. And somehow I find that interesting.
But
I don't even know what I'm saying.
But this is
I find it interesting.
This is the kind of story that separates us. Had it happened in another country, there's less likelihood that a bar fight or a street fight would have escalated into a situation where 12 were wounded and 3 were killed. Because not everybody would be walking around with a gun.
Right.
You know, it'd be very interesting, like, to just look at that. If you could look at the intersection of 3rd and South at 11:30 on Saturday night, where there were hundreds of people around, and just sort of freeze frame. And if you had the ability, and I'm sure we're not far from having the ability, maybe it already exists, but to have the ability to look at that crowd, and if there were 300 people on a random Saturday night in Philadelphia, 3rd and South, how many were carrying a firearm?
What is your guess?
I don't know. I just think it would be very interesting to, I mean, I don't know. Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 20? I don't know. I don't know.
And when something like that happens, does everybody with a gun pull out the gun? I don't know either. I mean, that's stunning to me, but they're unraveling it as we speak.
I don't want to take my eye off of Ukraine because, as I said on CNN on Saturday, I'm concerned that the worst is yet to come and that people are going to lose their focus. Americans lose their interest. That's what Vladimir Putin thinks. And as a matter of fact, that was my Saturday survey question at Smerconish.com. Is Vladimir Putin correct in believing that the West will lose its resolve with war in Ukraine? No. We're 73.49%. I hope you're right. I'm worried about it. We had 24,244 cast ballots, so a lot of ballots cast. Now listen to this, because the war has recently been in the far east, in the Donbass region. But the story from yesterday is that on Sunday, Russia took aim at Western military supplies for Ukraine, launching airstrikes in Kyiv that it claimed destroyed tanks donated from abroad, as Putin warned that any Western deliveries of long-range rocket systems would prompt Moscow to hit objects that we haven't yet struck. This is the issue, that Ukraine wanted the long-range technology. President Biden said he was going to give it to them, and then wrote an essay in the New York Times last week that I discussed at length, where he said this is only to be used in Ukraine. And I've wondered aloud, and did so with Admiral Stavridis, as a matter of fact, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, like, how exactly can you guarantee that Ukraine won't use the weaponry and strike targets inside of Russia? The president, not happy with his standing. According to a story in Politico today, which is no surprise, President Biden and his aides have grown increasingly frustrated by their inability to turn the tide against a cascade of challenges threatening to overwhelm the administration. Edward Isaac Dover was a guest on this program on Friday. He wrote a lengthy piece for CNN saying, having interviewed a dozen White House officials and people who were close to those serving in the White House, talking about the level of frustration and the issue of having trouble breaking through. And if you were listening on Friday, I said, casting the issue that way suggests that the administration has the answers, if only they could get the message through. And I'm not sure that's the case. So what's the solution to bring this full circle? The solution is, I guess, in part, that Wednesday night, the president is going to go on Jimmy Kimmel, trying to get out of the White House. TC, I think you need to extend an invitation to the White House for the president to be on this program.
My pleasure.
Now, I say that recognizing, because I think, White Houses, not just this one, I'll say administrations get thin-skinned. And when I did a segment here on POTUS recently and said similarly on CNN that you ought to think about announcing now that he's not running for re-election, I probably doomed myself. The president could do a hell of a lot worse than to come here where I would treat him with dignity and respect and talk about the issues of the day.
You always treat guests with dignity and respect. It actually doesn't matter if they're the president of the United States or if they're some random person that has made news in some random way that we've never heard of before. So that I know for sure, and I will extend the invitation.
Now, here's good news for the Biden administration. Donald Trump is growing restless. And according to some, and the coverage of this today is from NBC News, this is at the website, of course, Smerconish.com, wants to announce sooner than later that he's going to run for, I was going to say re-election. He's going to run for the presidency in 2024. Now, I say this is good news for Joe Biden because they need an opponent. They need Donald Trump. They need to present, Democrats do, the midterm election as yet another referendum on Trump. So the best news that I think the Biden administration has heard in a long time is the NBC story that says former President Trump is bored at Mar-a-Lago, anxious to get back in the political arena as a candidate, not as a kingmaker, according to his advisors. The midterms would therefore be as much about Trump as they are crime and the border and inflation, at least according to me. This is a big week because Thursday night, the January 6th commission hearings begin. Yes, I said Thursday night as in prime time. Robert Costa, our friend, now at CBS News, had to sit down with Liz Cheney. And I like this. He asks the question of the committee's vice chair, the Wyoming representative, are you confident that what you have found as a committee will somehow grab the American people by the lapels and say, wake up, you have to pay attention? I am, she said, calling the insurrection an ongoing threat. We are not in a situation former President Trump has expressed any remorse about what happened. We are, in fact, in a situation where he continues to use even more extreme language, frankly, than language that caused the attack. Are people going to pay attention? Will Thursday night move the needle? I don't know. I've read and I don't know who is the lead witness, but they better start with a bang because, TC, in trying cases, I would sometimes you would start with the most explosive witness that you had to catch people's attention, but more often I would build the case methodically and try and tell the story.
What are you going to do in this case?
Of course, oftentimes you were at the whim of the schedules of witnesses, so you couldn't put your case on the way you'd hope to in the perfect world, in the abstract. But what I'm saying to you is Wednesday night at 8 better be Thursday night better be a whole moment.
Because they got to grab.
Or click, click,
never to be
click.
seen again.
That'll be it.
Right. And then that will be what you think of it.
If it comes off as the same old, then that'll be the end. So Thursday night, I put that on everybody's schedule for the week. And I would just circle and underscore tomorrow, big California elections. There's a really interesting LA mayoral race. I have coverage from Deadline at Smerconish.com that talks about a divided Hollywood on the LA mayor's race. But I think the marquee race tomorrow is actually a recall race for Chesa Boudin. Chesa Boudin, who is the highest profile of these progressive prosecutors in the country, facing recall. If Boudin goes down tomorrow in San Francisco, I think it'll send shockwaves through this movement of electing progressive prosecutors. All of that is at Smerconish.com, the newsletter. I hope that you are subscribed. Today's survey question, love this subject. Which workplace approach is the most productive? In the office, at home, or a hybrid? Vote on today's survey question at Smerconish.com. Register, share the newsletter with a friend. See you tomorrow.